Our scripture today is from Mark, and Mark was a longtime missionary who spent a lot of time with Paul and Barnabas, and is reported to be the first person to record the story of Jesus' life, including a lot of the miracles that were performed. And today we hear the unique request of James and John. James and John, the son of Zebedee, came forward to him and said, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask you." And he said to them, "What is it you want me to do for you?" And they said to him, "Grant us to sit, one at your right hand and one at your left hand, in your glory." But Jesus said to them, "You do not know what you're asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink, or be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with?" They replied, "We are able." Then Jesus said to them, "The cup that I drink, you will drink, and with the baptism with which I am baptized, you will be baptized. But to sit at my right hand or left hand is not mine to grant, but it is for those whom it has been prepared." Jesus called them and said to them, "You know that among the Gentiles, those whom they recognize as the rulers lord over it, and their great ones are tyrants over them. But it is not so among you, but whoever wishes to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you, you must be slave to all. For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many." Amen.
What is of greatest value in our culture today? How do we measure that value? We live in a consumer-based culture that focuses on what we have, how much money we make, the kind of clothes we wear, the car we drive, the house we live in, the neighborhood even. How do I know this? I am a product of the culture. I've already admitted to my coveting. I want nice things. I seek the same prestige as everyone else. We're enculturated that way, trained, brought up in that understanding of the way the world works. And Jesus says, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. So what does that say about what we value? The same was true in Jesus' time. They may not have coveted cars or neighborhoods, but there was a cultural pecking order. Now remember that our readings from Mark this fall have all had the same sort of theme. And here we head to Jerusalem, Jesus and his disciples, where all that he predicted about his suffering and death will come true. Just before we enter the story in Mark, the scripture tells us that those who followed Jesus to Jerusalem were afraid. Were they afraid because maybe his cryptic predictions about suffering and death might come true? Or are they afraid because they still don't understand what Jesus is talking about? Brothers James and John asked Jesus a favor, to be seated in a place of honor when Jesus comes in his glory. The question is an assumption based on what the culture deemed honorable and of value. They seek status, but what they seek in terms of closeness is not to imitate Jesus' servanthood, but to gain a privileged position. Then Jesus answers their question with another question. Jesus wonders if they're willing to drink from the same cup, to share in the same baptism as him. Those have symbolic meaning. They're echoed in our statement of faith. In the questions we just shared with Chris and Steve about their participation in this community we call the church. The cup represents joy and suffering in the Hebrew Scriptures. And baptism involves dying and rising with Christ. In a culture of status and competition, of course, the brothers' affirmation that, sure, we can do what you ask of us, Jesus, is met with jealousy and anger by the other 10 disciples. They don't want them to have that position. They want in on that status, but they, like James and John, don't know what they're asking. Jesus makes it clear to that community that what he's building among his followers is wholly different than what the world sees, than the culture that provokes these questions of status and privilege. Sometimes we forget how countercultural Jesus was. That thinking was revolutionary. It's still revolutionary. Our place in community finds expression in not what rank we are or what privilege or authority we can exercise over others, but in what service we can render in their midst. Closeness with Jesus comes from imitating the way he lives his life for others. Yesterday, I had the privilege of being with our confirmands and mentors as we volunteered with Street Life and Dispensa de la Paz. And what makes that culture there so unique is how countercultural it is. Mary Jo, where's Mary Jo? I think you're the one that mentioned you've tapped into some secret here about the way you do this ministry and mission, and that secret is the imitation of Christ. And they make it very clear. It doesn't matter if you're a doctor, if you're a professor, if you're the owner of a business, what your reasons are for being there volunteering. You will do what's asked of you, and there is no job that's unworthy. So you may sweep the floor, you may empty the garbage, you may share with others in a way that's out of your comfort zone. But they also see in all those they serve the same humanity. The playing field is leveled. It doesn't matter if you just walked over from the bridge you're sleeping under to get a hot meal and a sandwich, or if you took the day off from the corporation you lead. We are all God's children, and that playing field is leveled. What would that look like? How would truly living that way change our world? When we think of it from the vantage point of our privilege, let's be honest, it's scary. It means sacrifice. It means giving things up. It's threatening to us. Like the rich young man that we talked about last Sunday, we don't want to let go of what the world has taught us to value. We're enculturated to believe that there's only so much to go around. There's only so many seats at the table. So if we get a place of privilege, we better hang on to it. You know, there's a phenomenon in which people who have earned their way to a certain position of privilege or status, instead of turning back and helping others through that door, close it behind them. Because those who follow might threaten the position they've worked so hard for. It's not bad. We are not bad. Jesus doesn't scold James and John. Jesus didn't scold the rich young man. He loves them. He understands that they're products of a culture that has convinced them that this is the way the world works. But Jesus offers an alternative. Not just because it's what Jesus wants us to do, not just for the future of God's creation, but because in following Jesus' radical new way, we are freed from the constructs of this culture. Jesus opens the way to life and happiness. Imagine a world in which the most prestigious jobs, the most well-paid jobs, are those jobs that nobody wants to do. The mopping the floors, the cooking the food, the cleaning the bedpans. Imagine a world instead of bumper stickers celebrating our honor students, who we're all very proud of. There were bumper stickers celebrating those kids who succeeded in spite of the odds being against them. Imagine a world in which the most revered qualities are kindness and generosity and love and sacrifice. This vision is not just some egalitarian dream. It is for all of us, because all of us are less than. All of us are hurting, needy, poor in spirit in some way. And isn't it wonderful to know that God sees us, sees that part of ourselves, and loves us without having to earn it or merit it or prove it, that we are worthy? Isn't it a blessing to know that if or when all our striving or earning or privilege falls apart, that those things didn't really matter? I wish I could convey this vision in a way that brought hope and not fear. In fact, one of the things we all talked about in our debrief after serving the morning at Dispenza was how hopeful the place is, in spite of the fact that the people who are guests there are struggling, and how our eyes, as those who came to serve, were opened to the injustice and the pain and the suffering and the poverty and the violence and the risk of those communities. And yet we go away feeling lifted up, hopeful, empowered. I'm in that place where the disciples find themselves, between the joyful possibility of Jesus' vision and the fear of what I have to let go of to make that vision a reality. Like the disciples, I long for that vision to be true, but lack the trust to let go and let God's vision reign, let alone do the work that I need to do to make it happen. We're not alone. That tension between God's realm and our reality remains. All we can do is keep hoping and trusting and trying. My new favorite hymn was sung at my installation here almost 2 years ago, and again just a couple of weeks ago by the Praise Band. It's written by David Lohman, and it was commissioned by an organization, Catholics for Marriage Equality, of the Archdiocese of Minnesota, and it became kind of an anthem for this vision. And I love it because it expresses this vision that Jesus is laying out before the disciples and us, where there's room enough for everyone, where everybody has that extravagant, unending love of God without limits. I share the chorus with you as a prayer that this vision may become our reality. David Lohman writes, "May our hearts and minds be opened. Fling the church doors open wide. There's room enough for everyone inside. For in God, there is a welcome. In God, we all belong. May that welcome be our song." Jesus said, but whoever wishes to become great among you must be servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you must be slave of all. Amen.